Welcome to the Spent the Rent podcast. I am your host, Patty Rose. My guest today is the Chief Petitioner from the Oregon People's Rebate, Antonio Gisbert. Did I say that correctly?
Close enough, thank you.
Okay. Well, Antonio, thank you for doing this. You've been reaching out to me over the last few weeks to get on the podcast and talk about the Oregon People's Rebate. Let's just get right into it. What is the Oregon People's Rebate?
Thank you, Patty, for the opportunity to tell your audience about what we're trying to do. The Oregon People's Rebate is a statewide ballot initiative that we are qualifying for the November 2022 general election. So not 2020, but 2022. What it would do is that it would rebate every Oregonian about $750 every year.
So basically, you're not disqualified if you're a certain tax bracket, if you make too much. Now, with minors, if you're under 18, so 17 and under, would it be that whoever claims them as a dependent would then receive the rebate?
That's correct. Yeah, and that is whoever claims the dependents as the dependent that year as a dependent. I mean, divorce court normally the parents normally switch that every other year.
Right.
So that
So $750, and it would be on your tax return. Would it be included in the earned income credit?
No. So we expect that most people will claim the rebate on their tax form because it's probably just easier to just check a box. But in fact, you don't have to file taxes to claim the rebate.
Oh, wow.
So you can imagine a scenario where in January, right, a family of four thinks that they want to claim the rebate right then and there, and because say they want to use the $3,000 sooner rather than later, and so then they would, you would claim the rebate on a state form. I mean, it should be a very low barrier of entry to get the rebate, right? Just your name, you attest that you live in Oregon for more than 200 days, boom, you get the rebate.
Wow, and that's good because there is a lot of people that, for different reasons, don't file a tax return. I mean, I know people on disability, you don't pay taxes on that. So that's actually really good to know. So the big question that everybody's going to have, how is it paid for?
Sure. It's paid for by increasing the minimum tax for corporations, for the largest corporations doing business in Oregon. These are corporations that sell more than $25 million worth of stuff in the state. So you're thinking of like Comcast, Walmart, Bank of America, Fred Meyer stores. These are not small, medium mom and pop shops. Your local coffee shop does not sell $68,000 worth of coffee a day. They do not meet the $25 million per year standard, and therefore will not be affected by the higher minimum tax. Like I said, currently, these giant corporations pay less than 1% in taxes, like less than 1/8 of 1%, in fact. The new minimum would be 3%. And for comparison, you and I as Oregonians, we pay between 5% and 9.9% in taxes, depending on how much money we earn, right? So
we're talking strictly state taxes. On this part, they're being, because it's taxed by the state, because this is only being done for the state of Oregon, correct? Right.
And it applies to Oregon corporations. We've done some research. There's about 2,000 Oregon corporations who are big enough to qualify for the new minimum. And then also out-of-state corporations doing business in Oregon.
Right. So
that's important.
Yeah, right. So then one of the big concerns anytime you tax big business, big corporations, is that the company is going to leave. And so for this, what would you tell people that's their concern?
So corporations. So there's that fear. It's pretty unfounded for various reasons. Number one, most of these corporations are already not Oregon corporations.
Right.
So you think of Walmart, right? That's not an Oregon corporation, and neither really is Fred Meyer. Fred Meyer is owned by Kroger, and they're a Cincinnati, Ohio corporation. So, Walmart and Fred Meyer are not going to go anywhere because, importantly, you cannot outsource the customers in Oregon.
Right.
I mean, we're going to need food, and we're going to need cable service, and we're going to need the stuff that we need. So it makes no sense for Comcast or Walmart to all of a sudden say we're going to close all our stores in Oregon, right? That's like no corporation ever does that.
No.
I mean, taxes are higher in California, Nevada, and those corporations are doing just fine there. For everybody, people will ask about Nike. Well, is Nike going to leave? I do not know. I don't have a crystal ball, right? But it wouldn't benefit Nike at all to leave because of the Oregon People's Rebate, because the tax, they only have to pay tax for the stuff that they sell in the state of Oregon.
Right.
So if they leave and they go to Ireland, say, tax shelter,
Sure.
they're still going to be selling shirts down in Eugene and shoes down in Eugene in Oregon. And so that's the same tax. So it doesn't really, it's designed to neutralize that criticism.
So it's not a tax on, it's not the business based on their address at all. It has nothing to do with where they're located. It's based on where they're doing business. So if the profits are made in Oregon, that's what will be taxed.
That's exactly right. And that is why,
go ahead.
That is kind of why we call it a rebate. It is very much like if you go to a big box store to buy a TV and there's an instant $100 rebate at the register, or a bag of potato chips might have a $1 instant rebate coupon on it, right? You peel it off the bag of potato chips, you go to register, you give it to them, they take $1 off, right? It's the same way. It's our money. It's our money when we go buy at these large retailers, these large corporations. We get a rebate off of the money that we give them,
right?
Which is about 3%.
So you kind of already answered this, but how would this affect small businesses? So you had mentioned before that the cutoff is businesses that are making $68,000 a day, which equates to $25 million a year. And is that in profits that they're making, or is that in sales?
Sales or income. Yeah.
Okay.
It's just like you and I. We pay taxes on our income. This is like a corporation's income in the state of Oregon.
So so small business, I don't think that we would call a small business a business that's bringing in $25 million in sales. That does get a little tricky when the margins are small for some businesses, and I understand that fear. But what would you say to that? It's not really going to affect small businesses.
Well, it actually is absolutely going to affect small businesses, but in a good way, right? So think of your local coffee shop, right? For example, Theo's in Eugene.
Sure.
Or
like Espresso Roma.
Espresso Roma, right? They do not sell $68,000 worth of coffee a day. I do not know, but it just doesn't seem like that's a thing.
No.
Right? However, every single one of the customers in that store is going to have an additional $750 in their pocket. Now, we all don't have to buy, $750 worth of coffee, but maybe, you and I will get another Danish or another cup. And so then it's going to help the small business community, the small, medium business community, right? I mean, it's important when we talk about the Oregon People's Rebate, for the individual voter, right? For you, it's about $750. For your family of 4, it's about $3,000. That makes a big difference.
Yeah.
But then when you think about it from a community perspective and the opportunity that the Oregon People's Rebate is going to bring back into our communities, right? Then the numbers get giant. So we have, on our webpage, we have this section called Deep Dive, where you can look up where your community, the impact of the Oregon People's Rebate in your community. And in Springfield, for example, it would be $46 million or so. That is to say, the Springfield community is going to be collectively $46 million richer.
Put into the economy, right?
Right. I mean, So it's been shown that when you give people money, particularly people who are not millionaires, they normally spend it on what they need to do, right? The current $1,200 pandemic assistance checks sort of are an example of this, right? People use that money to buy food, to pay for rent, right? Basic services that are spent in the community.
Right.
And so this is going to be a little bit like that.
And I think the $750, I like the way that you're framing it with the way that you're marketing this. And I'm going to talk about that at the end, how people can find out more information. But the $750 is for an individual. So if you're a single citizen in Oregon, you're no children, that's what you would get. But like you had kind of talked about before, a family of four, say that you and your partner have 2 children. Usually the average is like 1.5 kids, I think, but I don't know how half kids work. No, but so a family of 4, it works out to be like $3,000. That is very significant, because I think that the average citizen could look at their either tax return or tax burden at the end of the year, and it's somewhere in that range a lot of times. So sometimes this could mean that a middle class family might not have a tax burden at the end of the year, and I think that that's pretty significant.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, there's value as well in the money coming in as a lump, right? Instead of being like $67 every month, right? To get, for that family to get or whatever 3,000 divided by 12 comes out to be. When you get those $3,000 to that family of 4, that is awesome, right? And then talking to folks about how they would use the rebate, it's an amazing, beautiful experience, because it really brings a window into that person's life.
Right.
So anecdotally, a long time ago, I did a newspaper interview on the phone, and I asked the person who interviewed me, I asked them, what would you use the $750 for? And their reply was, that they would finally get their teeth fixed. Apparently, dental work is expensive. We all know that. And this reporter has been spacing out dental work according to his ability to pay. But if he got these $750, he could just get it done all at once, and it'd be a lot better.
Yeah.
And so that's wonderful,
it
right?
can be life-changing.
Yeah, I mean, you could do, $3,000 gets you a pretty decent car, right? I've definitely had cars that I paid less than that for,
Sure.
but they were not very decent. And yeah, so like the sky's really the limit. I mean, for example, like even if you say, oh, I do not need the money, we can talk about what you can do with it, that you can actually decline the rebate if you want to, and then it goes to state to pay for basic services. But if you do not need the money, I mean, you can always donate it to whatever worthy cause you want to donate it to.
Right.
Or, like, say if you have a mortgage, you can pay your mortgage off early, and then that will make a giant difference in the.
Oh my gosh, that's significant. That's actually, it's funny,
Right?
because you didn't ask me the question as far as what I would put it to, but now that you say that, that's exactly what I would put it to. Because full disclosure, that's roughly my half of my mortgage, is roughly $750, and so we refinanced our house, and during the pandemic, which was a really good time to do it because the interest rates are low. And not to get off point, but by doing that, we agreed that even though we're making less of a payment every year or every month, we're going to go ahead and continue to pay. We cut it in half, how much less we were saving, so that we're making one extra payment a year. And that lowers your mortgage by 7 years by how much you have to pay it. So that's significant. Not to get too off track, but yeah, that's absolutely life-changing for a family. So there's been a lot of comparisons to the Alaskan Permanent Fund Dividend. Can you tell me some similarities and some differences between that? And for anybody not familiar, I'm not super versed on it, but isn't that fund everybody that lives in Alaska because of oil? They get compensated by the government, by the state. So can you tell me some of the similarities and the differences between that?
Yeah, when some of the folks who have been really involved, particularly early on in the process, they're from Alaska, and so we did quite a bit of research on how the Alaska Permanent Fund Dividend works, what works well about it and what doesn't. Like you said, Patty, the Alaska Permanent Fund dividend is funded. It's an extraction tax, and so the closest we could have something like that in Oregon, and if we did, we would probably use timber, right? Timber sales, but we don't, so it's fine. And so what it is, the way it works is that I think that every Alaskan gets about $1,200, depends on the year, worth of they call it there a dividend. We call it a rebate. But the way, like on the ground, when you talk to an Alaskan, it's like, that's awesome real money, right? So, so for example, say like, stores in Alaska will have sales whenever the dividend comes out, and sort of like they'll encourage folks to spend their dividend in their store, right? And for families, it's a chunk of money that really can help a family, for example, get the security deposit to be able to move to a better apartment, right? This little sort of like, particularly if you're low income, there are little sticking points and traps that keep you from getting ahead, and what you often need is just a little bit of extra liquidity, a little bit of extra cash on hand to be able to fix your car so that it is reliable, so that you're not late to work and you do not get fired, right?
So I would say the difference with Oregon timber, for example, and I know that's not what we were talking about either, but timber is put back into, like, they take trees down, they replant them. With the oil in Alaska, they're not putting it back into the ground. You know what I mean? So I think that's one of the differences between these two things, is that this is kind of the cost of doing business for these massive corporations, where we need to, people can call it what they want, democratic socialism, where they're redistributing the wealth, because these companies are making an enormous amount of profits and paying very little tax. So somebody that had talked about this kind of model is Andrew Yang. Is that true? I mean, Andrew Yang was talking about a value-added tax. Is that kind of what we're talking about?
Not really. Yeah, people often ask if this is like the universal basic income, and it really is more like the Alaska Permanent Fund dividend, for the simple reason that nobody can live on $750.
Sure.
So it's just not that. And the value-added tax is sort of like really kind of pretty complicated, and I'm not super expert on it. But I think that the simplest way to understand the Oregon People's Rebate is that corporations in Oregon can pay one of two different taxes, and they always pay the lower one of the two. I'm sorry, they have to pay the higher one of the two. I apologize for that. But the higher one of the two is still super, super low. It's like 1/8 of 1%. And that's the thing that we raised to 3%. And it's really just an income tax, like the way you and I pay an income tax. Comcast, Walmart should pay an income tax too.
And so it goes directly to the people.
Yes,
right.
That's kind of the cool thing about it, that it's not that it goes directly to the people, and it doesn't become a financial instrument like the Alaska Permanent Fund dividend, which is like in Alaska, they pull all this money from this non-renewable source that you were talking about into a financial instrument, and then that gets invested, and and then the interest of that, the dividend, gets paid out.
Wow.
That turns out to, so then there's like this giant pool of money somewhere floating around in like Wall Street or somewhere.
Sure.
And then about every decade, people in Alaska get into like huge fights about raiding that giant pool of money. Well, the way we structure the Oregon People's Rebate is that there is no giant pool of money. Whatever extra money comes into the state every year, it gets divided equally among everybody in Oregon, regardless of whatever, right? If you're an Oregonian, you get an equal share of that. And so then there's like no giant pool of money to fight over.
So then if it's $750 is set for how long? Because that, like, for example, with the pandemic, the tax what is being brought in, tax revenue for the local government is going to be less because people were not working for certain times. There's been, a lot of effect to that. So is this set maybe for 10 years and then it's reviewed after 10 years, or because how do you come to the number of $750?
Thank you. It's really about $750 because the Oregon People's Rebate is designed to be revenue neutral for the state. And so it's basically whatever extra money comes into the state is divided by the number of people in the state, and that's it.
So it's an average. So there's give or take. There's going to be better years and worse years.
It's a conservative estimate. We figure that it's going to bring in about $3 billion of money into the state, and there's about 4 million Oregonians. So then you do a quick math, and it comes out to about 750.
Right.
It's conservative, but
this year is going to be different, of course. But years past, and I'm sure you've done your research, how consistent is it? Is it pretty flat, like as far as how much money is coming in from that fund would be? I mean, because you've done the models, I'm sure. So is it pretty flat year to year? Is it pretty consistent, or is there peaks and valleys?
Yeah, it's pretty flat, but also, if you think about Main Street and compared to Wall Street, right? Over the past recent history, there's been consolidation in retail, right? So your small, your coffee shop sort of got taken over by Starbucks, sort of thing. Same thing with grocery stores. Right now in Springfield, in Eugene, we have a few independent small grocery stores, but really this industry is dominated by Fred Meyers and the giant stores, right? So in recent history, whatever the last 20 years, there's been a steady increase in consolidation. And so unless that changes, which is kind of
that's weird. A good thing if it changes, like essentially, yeah. Because if I'm understanding you correctly, if you were to get less of a rebate, it's because the money isn't being pooled by 200 companies. It's being spread out, like as far as the small businesses would actually benefit. So if the rebate goes down, that means small businesses like my barbershop, for example, that means that those businesses are starting to see some of the pot. And that's actually a good thing. So I'm optimistic about this. I think it's really good. Now, one of the main reasons that we had to do this today is because of COVID, and why this was initially, the plan was to have it on the 2020 ballot. There's too many moving parts for right now. Getting signatures is very difficult. So what do people do? They go to the website, which is OPR2020.org. And then 2022, OPR2022.org. And you can sign up, and then they will have to mail back their wet signature. Is that correct?
Yeah. So your audience has probably at some point in time done a ballot initiative. Normally people with clipboards in front of large events, right? So because of social distancing, we can't do that, or it's extremely difficult to do that safely. It's possible, but so what we are doing right now is collecting the first 1,000 signatures that we're going to need to qualify for the November 2022 election. So all we need is 1,000, so it's not a giant number. But importantly, because it's an Oregon thing, we're trying to get signatures from across Oregon, right? Under normal times, it'd be really easy to collect 1,000 signatures, right? Sure. You would just go to any spot full of people and just bang, right? But so we can do that now. So we have this sort of remote system where, like you said, if you go to our webpage, OPR2022.org, you'll see a link to sign the petition. Click on it. You can either download, print, sign, and return a signature sheet, returned by mail, or you can request that I mail you one, and I will mail you a signature sheet with a stamped returned envelope, and you just do it from home, and it's pretty easy.
And that's what I did, because I signed the petition, and then I noticed, because I have informed delivery, which is amazing. I don't know if anyone else uses that, where I can get a little email in the morning and it tells me what mail's coming. and I'm getting it today. So I will be mailing it back. It's pretty cool how that whole process works. I think you're doing a good job of being quick and getting it to people. I'm going to do my part. Now, as this gets closer, I'm sure a deadline will come. I don't want to talk about a deadline right now because I don't want to discourage people from just doing it, getting it out of the way. But there will come a time where there's a crunch. And if we're still under the signatures, I'll have you back on. I'll have you back on regardless when it gets closer. And yes, this seems like a long time, 2022, but time flies. And so anybody listening to this, there's going to be links in the show notes to the website, to the Facebook page, to the Instagram. And it's all the same, basically OPR2022. And so, yeah, links will be in the show notes about where you can do the signing of, to request that the petition is mailed to you. And so, yeah, OPR2022.org. Antonio, thank you for doing this. And we'll touch back with you in the future and see how the progress is going with this. But I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it as well.
I'm going to end this with a song that I thought was sort of fitting. This is a song I made years ago. It's called Never Enough by me, Self-Esteem Boat Willie, aka Patty Rose. So this is Never Enough. Antonio, thanks a lot.
Thank you, Barry.
I was disconnected but still affected by those who have surrounded me. Had lost interest and felt so distant, my tears, they were drowning me. But now I see the standards are set from within. I found the strength to not sink, I swim. I give thanks to the motivators, releasing hate from envious places. Tip my cap to the glow creators, my smiles on a child's face. This is the only purpose worth it. Every parent knows that no one is perfect. You can give it your all, but it's never enough. You can try and stand tall, but you never feel tough. You can mask your insecurities and bottle up your fears inside, but a part of you still hide. You can give it your all, but it's never enough. You can try and stand tall, but you never feel tough. You can mask your insecurities and bottle up your fears inside, but a part of you still hide. Behind a hardened exterior, inside you feel you're inferior. You're handcuffed, can't live up, don't give up, just get up and dust yourself off the trust that can be gone. If you lie to yourself about the level of courtesy, help no one, you're no fun, it hurts to see narcissism succeed, decisions in need. All your loved ones get desperate and they feel they should leave. Give it your all, but it's never enough. You can try and stand tall, but you never feel tough. You can mask your insecurities and bottle up your fears inside, but a part of you still hide. You can give it your all, but it's never enough. You can try and stand tall, but you never feel tough. You can mask your insecurities and bottle up your fears inside, but a part of you still hide. You can give it your all, but it's never enough. You can try and stand tall, but you never feel tough. You can mask your insecurities and bottle up your fears inside, but a part of you still hide. You can give it your all, but it's never enough. You can try and stand tall, but you never feel tough. You can mask your insecurities and bottle up your fears inside, but a part of you still hides.